The alarm bells rang through the deep space station like angry wasps. Captain Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the glowing screens around him. He had been drinking coffee for 6 hours straight, watching the empty darkness of space for any signs of trouble. "Captain, we're getting something strange," said Lisa Rodriguez from her seat at the communications desk. Her fingers moved quickly over the buttons as she tried to clean up the signal. "It's coming from the outer rim, way past the normal shipping lanes." Jake stood up and walked over to her station. The signal was weak and broken, like someone trying to talk through a bad phone connection. "Can you make it clearer?" Lisa worked for several minutes, her face serious with concentration. Slowly, the static began to fade and words started to come through. But these weren't human words. The voice was high and musical, almost like singing. "It's the Kalari," said Dr. Henry Palmer, the ship's alien expert. He had been sleeping in his quarters, but came running when he heard the alarms. "I'd know their language anywhere. They're the ones who helped us during the plague outbreak on Mars 5 years ago." Jake remembered the Kalari well. They had arrived in their white medical ships when the red planet was dying from a mysterious disease. The Kalari doctors had worked day and night to save human lives, asking for nothing in return. They were known throughout the galaxy as healers and helpers. "What are they saying?" Jake asked. Dr. Palmer listened carefully as the alien voice continued. "It's desperate message." His face grew pale as he understood the words. "They're asking for help. Their whole world is under attack. The Vorthic Empire has invaded their space." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Vorthic. They were a warrior race that conquered other planets for fun. Their ships were black and deadly, and they showed no mercy to anyone who got in their way. "The Kalari are peaceful," Dr. Palmer continued. "They don't have a real military. They spend all their time and money on hospitals and research labs. They can't fight back against the Vorthic." Lisa's hands shook as she continued to work on the signal. More words came through, and Dr. Palmer translated them with growing horror. "They're saying the Vorthic are destroying their cities. Millions of Kalari are already dead or captured. They're asking if anyone in the galaxy will help them." Jake felt a cold anger building in his chest. The Kalari had saved countless lives across the galaxy. When other races were dying from diseases or natural disasters, the Kalari always came to help. They had medical technology that could cure almost anything, and they shared it freely with everyone. "Have they contacted the Galactic Council?" Jake asked. Dr. Palmer nodded sadly. "They tried. The Council voted to stay out of it. They're too scared of the Vorthic to help. They've declared the Kalari system a quarantine zone. No one is allowed to go there." "What about their other allies? The races they've helped before?" "All gone," Dr. Palmer said quietly. "The Zenthari, the Morphic Collective, even the Altarian Republic. They all said they couldn't risk war with the Vorthic Empire. The Kalari are completely alone." Lisa looked up from her station with tears in her eyes. "Captain, I'm picking up more signals. They're not words this time. They're just screaming. Thousands of voices calling for help." Jake stared at the communications display. The Kalari signal was getting weaker, which meant their transmitters were being destroyed one by one. Soon there would be no more calls for help. There would be no more Kalari. "Sir," said Ryan Cooper, the ship's tactical officer, "I'm getting reports from Earth Command. They're ordering all human ships to stay away from the Kalari system. They don't want us to get involved either." Jake felt his hands curl into fists. The human government was just like all the others. They were too afraid to do what was right. The Kalari had risked their lives to save humans, but now humans wouldn't even try to save them. "Captain," Dr. Palmer said softly, "the Kalari have been helping other races for over 1,000 years. They've never asked for anything in return. They've saved billions of lives. And now, when they need help the most, everyone has turned their backs on them. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These men and women had joined the space service to explore the galaxy and help others. They hadn't signed up to watch. Good people die while doing nothing. How long until the Kalari system is completely destroyed? Jake asked. Dr. Palmer checked his calculations. Based on Vorthic military patterns, maybe 2 weeks. 3 at most. After that, there won't be any Kalari left alive. The bridge was quiet except for the soft beeping of the computers. Jake thought about his orders from Earth Command. He thought about the dangers of fighting the Vorthic Empire. He thought about what would happen to his crew if they got involved. Then he thought about the Kalari doctors who had worked without sleep to save human children during the Mars plague. He thought about how they had shared their medicine freely, even though they could have demanded payment. He thought about how they always answered calls for help, no matter how dangerous it was. Jake walked over to the navigation console and began entering coordinates. Lisa, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're going to investigate a possible first contact situation in the Outer Rim. Sir? Lisa looked confused. Don't mention the Kalari. Don't mention the Vorthic. Just say we're checking out some strange signals. Ryan Cooper understood first. Captain, if we go to the Kalari system, we'll be disobeying direct orders. Jake looked at his tactical officer. Ryan, sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. The Kalari saved human lives when no one else would help us. Now it's our turn to help them. Dr. Palmer stepped forward. Captain, the Vorthic have dozens of warships. We're just one exploration vessel. We don't have the weapons or the numbers to fight them. Maybe not, Jake said as he finished entering the coordinates. But we're not going to let good people die without at least trying to help them. That's not who we are as humans. He turned to face his crew. I'm not ordering anyone to come with me. This is dangerous, and we might not come back. Anyone who wants to transfer to another ship can do so now. The crew looked at each other for a long moment. Then Lisa spoke up. Captain, where you go, we go. The Kalari saved my little brother during the plague. I'm not abandoning them now. One by one, the other crew members nodded their agreement. They were scared, but they were also determined. They couldn't stand by and watch genocide happen. Jake smiled for the first time in hours. Then let's go save some lives. Set course for the Kalari system, maximum speed. As the UHS Intrepid turned toward the Outer Rim, Jake knew they were probably flying to their deaths. But he also knew they were doing the right thing. Sometimes that was enough. The UHS Intrepid dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kalari system. What Jake Morrison saw through the main screen made his stomach turn. The beautiful blue-green planet that had once been home to billions of peaceful beings was now covered in black smoke and orange fires. My God, whispered Dr. Palmer as he stared at the destruction. Look what they've done. Huge Vorthic warships floated in space around the planet like hungry sharks. Their black hulls were covered in spikes and weapon ports. Red lights pulsed along their sides like angry eyes. The ships were 3 times bigger than the Intrepid and looked like they were built for only one purpose, destroying things. I count 15 enemy warships, reported Ryan Cooper from his tactical station. Each one has enough firepower to destroy a city. And Captain, I'm detecting smaller ships too, probably fighters and bombers. Lisa Rodriguez was trying to pick up any signals from the planet's surface. I'm getting very weak transmissions from underground bunkers. Some Kalari are still alive. Down there, but not many. Jake felt a mix of anger and sadness as he watched the orbital bombardment continue. Bright beams of energy shot down from the Vorthic ships, turning buildings and forests into ash. This wasn't a war. It was murder. "Sir, we're being scanned," said Tony Blake from the communications station. "The Vorthic know we're here." A few moments later, the main screen flickered and changed. Instead of showing the burning planet, it now showed the face of a Vorthic general. The alien looked like a cross between a lizard and a bull, with red eyes and sharp teeth. Scars covered his face from old battles. "Human vessel," the Vorthic said in a voice like grinding metal. "I am General Thrix of the Vorthic Empire. You are in restricted space. Leave now or be destroyed." Jake stood up and faced the screen. "General Thrix, I am Captain Morrison of the human ship Intrepid. I demand that you stop your attack on the Kaleri immediately." General Thrix laughed, a sound like rocks falling down a mountain. "You demand? You are from Earth, are you not? That small, weak planet on the edge of nowhere? What makes you think you can give orders to the mighty Vorthic Empire?" "The Kaleri are a peaceful people," Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm. "They've never hurt anyone. They're healers and doctors. This attack is unnecessary." "The Kaleri are weak," General Thrix replied. "They had valuable medical technology and a planet full of resources. We wanted both, so we took them. That is how the strong survive in this galaxy. The weak exist only to serve us." Jake felt his anger growing, but he forced himself to think clearly. "What if I told you that humans are willing to fight for the Kaleri? Would that change your mind?" General Thrix laughed even harder. "Fight? You? I have studied your species, human. You have barely left your own solar system. Your ships are slow and weak. Your weapons are primitive. You could not defeat one Vorthic fighter, let alone an entire fleet." The alien general leaned forward on his command chair. "I will give you one chance, Captain Morrison. Turn your ship around and leave. Forget about the Kaleri. They are finished. If you try to interfere, I will add your ship to the wreckage floating around this system." The communication ended, and the screen went back to showing the burning planet. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. "Well," said Engineer Maria Santos, "I guess diplomacy didn't work." "Captain," Ryan Cooper said quietly, "he's right about one thing. We can't fight 15 warships in a straight battle. They'll destroy us in minutes." Jake nodded. "You're right, Ryan. We can't fight them the way they expect us to fight. But maybe we don't have to." He walked over to the tactical display and studied the enemy ships. "The Vorthic are warriors, but they're also proud. General Thrix thinks we're weak and stupid. Maybe we can use that against them." Dr. Palmer looked confused. "What do you mean, Captain?" "The Vorthic fight like Vorthic," Jake explained. "They use brute force and overwhelming numbers. They probably expect every enemy to fight the same way. But humans think differently. We adapt. We find new ways to solve problems." Ryan Cooper began to understand. "You want to use unconventional tactics." "Exactly," Jake said. "Maria, what kind of equipment do we have on board that we can modify for combat?" The engineer thought for a moment. "Well, we have medical supply drones for delivering aid to disaster areas. We have mining lasers for collecting rock samples. We have sensor probes for deep space exploration. And we have the best stealth system in the human fleet," added Tony Blake. "The Vorthic scanned us, but they might not be able to track us if we go silent running." Jake began to see a plan forming. "Lisa, are you still getting signals from the Kaleri survivors?" "Yes, sir. They're in underground shelters on the planet's surface. The Vorthic are trying to find them, but the Kaleri built their bunkers deep." "Good. Ryan, I want you to study the Vorthic ship formations. Look for patterns, weaknesses, anything we can exploit." As his crew worked, Jake continued to watch the enemy fleet. The Vorthic ships moved in rigid formations, like they were following a textbook. Their tactics were probably thousands of years old and had worked against every enemy they'd ever faced, but they had never fought humans before. "Captain," Maria called out, "I think I can modify our medical drones to carry explosive charges. They're small and fast, and the Vorthik might not see them as threats until it's too late." "And I can reprogram our mining lasers," added Tony. "They're designed to cut through solid rock. They might be able to damage Vorthik hull armor." Ryan looked up from his tactical display. "Sir, I've found something interesting. The Vorthik ships are maintaining a standard orbital bombardment pattern. They are predictable. If we time it right, we might be able to get close enough to one of their ships to do some damage." Jake felt hope growing in his chest. "What about the Kalari? Can we coordinate with them?" Lisa nodded. "I've made contact with Dr. Valix, one of their senior scientists. He says they have some of their medical ships hidden in asteroid fields. The ships aren't armed, but they could help with rescue operations." "Perfect," Jake said. "Here's what we're going to do. We'll use our stealth systems to get close to the Vorthik fleet. Maria's modified drones will target their engines and weapons. While they're confused and trying to figure out what's happening, we'll use the mining lasers to damage their hulls." Dr. Palmer looked worried. "Captain, even if this works, we can only attack 1 or 2 ships. There are still 13 others." "I know," Jake admitted. "But if we can show the Vorthik that humans are willing to fight for the Kalari, maybe it will buy us some time. Maybe other species will realize they don't have to be afraid of the Vorthik." The plan was dangerous and probably impossible, but it was better than doing nothing. Jake's crew began preparing for battle with a determination that only humans seemed to possess. They were scared, but they refused to give up. 2 hours later, the Intrepid moved silently through space toward the Vorthik fleet. The ship's stealth systems hid them from enemy sensors, but Jake knew they only had one chance to make this work. "Target acquired," Ryan whispered. "The lead Vorthik battleship. It's the biggest one in the fleet." Maria launched the drones. Jake ordered. 10 small medical drones shot out of the Intrepid's cargo bay. Each one carried explosive charges that Maria had carefully prepared. They were tiny compared to the massive Vorthik warship, but Jake hoped they would be big enough. The drones reached their target and exploded against the battleship's engines. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the giant ship began to list to one side as its propulsion systems failed. "Direct hit," Ryan reported. "Their main engines are down." Alarms began blaring on Vorthik ships throughout the fleet. The aliens had not expected an attack, and they were slow to respond. "Now, Tony," Jake shouted. The Intrepid's mining lasers fired at maximum power, cutting deep gashes in the battleship's hull. Atmosphere began venting into space as the ship lost structural integrity. "Unknown vessel." General Thrix's voice boomed over the communication system. "Show yourself and fight with honor." But Jake had no intention of fighting with honor. This was about survival, not glory. The Intrepid fired again and again, using hit-and-run tactics that confused and frustrated the Vorthik. The alien ships were powerful, but they were also slow and predictable. The humans were like mosquitoes attacking an elephant, small but persistent. For the first time in years, the Vorthik bombardment of the planet stopped as the fleet tried to deal with this unexpected threat. In the underground bunkers, Kalari survivors looked up at their ceiling sensors and dared to hope. The battle had just begun, but humanity had sent a clear message to the galaxy. They would not abandon their friends, no matter what the odds. 3 days after the battle, Jake Morrison stood in the communication room of the Intrepid, reading the angry messages from Earth Command. The screen showed the red face of Admiral Patterson, who looked like he wanted to reach through the display and strangle Jake with his bare hands. "Morrison, what the hell do you think you're doing?" The Admiral shouted. "You've started a war with the Vorthik Empire." The Galactic Council is furious with us. They're threatening to kick humanity out of all trade agreements. Jake kept his voice calm. Sir, we couldn't let the Kalari be destroyed. They've helped us in the past. It was the right thing to do. The right thing? Admiral Patterson's voice got even louder. You've put the entire human race at risk. The Vorthic have already sent more ships to hunt you down. And now the Council is saying we're as dangerous as the Vorthic themselves. The communication ended with the Admiral's final order. Return to Earth immediately for court-martial. Jake turned off the screen and rubbed his tired eyes. His crew was looking at him with worry and confusion. So what do we do now, Captain? Asked Lisa Rodriguez. Before Jake could answer, Dr. Palmer rushed into the room with his tablet computer. Captain, you need to see this. I've been monitoring communications across the galaxy. Word about what we did is spreading. He showed Jake the tablet screen. It was full of messages from different alien races, all talking about the human ship that had fought the Vorthic to save the Kalari. Look at this, Dr. Palmer said, pointing to one message. It's from the Xanthari Republic. They're saying they remember how the Kalari saved them from the plague 20 years ago. They feel ashamed that they didn't help. Jake read more messages. The Morphic Collective was angry with themselves for abandoning the Kalari. The Altarian Republic was questioning why they had been so afraid of the Vorthic. Dozens of smaller races were sharing stories of how the Kalari had helped them over the centuries. The galaxy is starting to wake up, Dr. Palmer continued. They're remembering that the Kalari weren't just another race. They were the ones who always came to help when no one else would. Tony Blake looked up from his communication station. Captain, I'm getting a direct message from the Kalari underground. Bunkers. Dr. Valix wants to speak with you. The main screen lit up with the image of a Kalari scientist. Dr. Valix looked like a tall, thin human, but his skin was pale blue and his eyes were large and silver. Despite everything that had happened to his people, he looked calm and dignified. Captain Morrison, Dr. Valix said in his musical voice, I cannot express how grateful we are for what you and your crew have done. You gave us hope when we thought all was lost. Jake felt embarrassed by the praise. Dr. Valix, we're sorry we couldn't do more. We only damaged one Vorthic ship. There are still 14 others out there. You did more than damage a ship, Doctor. Valix replied, You showed the galaxy that someone still cares about doing what is right. That is worth more than any weapon. Dr. Valix leaned forward on his screen. Captain, I have been in contact with other survivors across our planet. We want to help you fight the Vorthic, but we don't know how. We are healers, not warriors, Jake thought for a moment. Doctor, your medical technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. Is there any way it could be used for defense instead of healing? Dr. Valix's silver eyes lit up with understanding. Yes, perhaps there is. Our nanobots are designed to repair damaged tissue, but they could be reprogrammed to repair damaged ship systems during battle. And our hospital ships have very advanced sensors that could detect enemy movements. That's a start, Jake said. But we need more than just the Kalari if we're going to stop the Vorthic. We need allies. Dr. Palmer stepped forward. Captain, I have an idea. What if we reach out to all the races that the Kalari have helped over the years? Maybe we can remind them of their debt. Jake nodded. It's worth a try. Tony, open channels to every species that has received Kalari aid in the past century. For the next several hours, Jake and his crew sent messages across the galaxy. They reminded the Xanthari of the plague cure that had saved their children. They told the Morphic Collective about the Kalari engineers who had rebuilt their cities after the asteroid strike. They contacted dozens of smaller races that owed their survival to Kalari intervention. The responses were mixed. Some races were still too afraid of the Vorthic to help. Others said they wanted to help, but didn't have the military strength to make a difference. But slowly, a few brave voices began to speak up. The first to respond was Captain Zara of the Zenthari Republic. Her ship, the Healing Light, was already heading toward Kalari space with medical supplies and a small escort fleet. "We cannot live with the shame of abandoning those who saved us," Captain Zara said during their communication. "The Zenthari remember their debts." Soon after, the Morphic Collective announced that their construction ships were coming to help repair damaged Kalari facilities. The Altarian Republic offered to share intelligence about Vorthic military tactics, but the most surprising response came from an unexpected source. Maria Santos was monitoring deep space communications when she picked up a signal from the Rigel. "Mining colonies." "Captain," she said excitedly, "I'm getting a message from the Rigel system. It's not from the government. It's from the miners and factory workers." The message was simple but powerful. "We remember the Kalari doctors who treated our children when the corporate bosses said it was too expensive. We're coming to help." Jake realized something important was happening. The official governments of the galaxy were too scared to fight the Vorthic, but ordinary people were starting to remember their consciences. Workers, traders, small colonies, and independent ships were all saying the same thing. They couldn't let the Kalari die alone. "This is incredible," said Dr. Palmer. "It's like we started a revolution without meaning to." But Jake knew that good intentions wouldn't be enough. "We need to organize this. If ships from all over the galaxy are coming to help, we need to coordinate our efforts." Ryan Cooper had been quietly working at his tactical station. "Captain, I've been thinking about this problem. The Vorthic are strong because they fight as one big fleet. But they're also predictable. What if we could organize our allies to fight differently?" "What do you mean?" "Well, the Kalari know medicine. The Zenthari are good at long-range sensors. The Morphic Collective builds things. The Rigel miners know about explosives. What if we combined all these skills into something new?" Jake began to see the possibilities. A fleet where every ship contributes something different. Not just weapons, but knowledge and specialized abilities. "Exactly," Ryan said. "The Vorthic have never faced anything like that before. They won't know how to respond." Dr. Valix's voice came through the communication system. "Captain Morrison, I have been listening to your conversation. The Kalari would be honored to be part of such an alliance. We can contribute our medical knowledge and our understanding of how to work together peacefully." Jake felt a surge of hope. "Dr. Valix, do you think the other races would accept human leadership of this alliance?" The Kalari scientist was quiet for a moment. "Captain, many races in the galaxy have lost faith in the strong. The Vorthic are strong, but they use their strength to hurt others. The Galactic Council is strong, but they use their strength to protect only themselves. You humans are not the strongest, but you use your strength to help others. That is the kind of leadership the galaxy needs right now." Over the next few days, more and more ships arrived in the Kalari system. They came from dozens of different worlds and species. Some were military vessels, but most were civilian ships that had been converted for the mission. Cargo haulers, medical ships, mining vessels, and even some luxury yachts whose owners had decided to join the fight. Jake found himself in command of the strangest fleet in galactic history. It wasn't the biggest or the most powerful, but it was united by something the Vorthic had never encountered before: the belief that some things were worth fighting for, even when the odds were impossible. The Vorthic reinforcements were coming, but now they wouldn't be facing just one human ship. They would be fighting an alliance of every race they had dismissed as weak or unimportant. Colonel Pete Johnson, a retired military officer who had joined the civilian volunteers, summed it up perfectly. The Vorthic made one big mistake. They thought being strong meant being alone. But humans know that real strength comes from helping each other. As Jake looked at the growing fleet around him, he realized that something had changed in the galaxy. The age of the strong bullying the sim. Weak was ending. The age of the forgotten standing together was just beginning. The alarm started ringing before dawn on what would become known as the darkest day of the war. Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when Lisa Rodriguez burst into his quarters with terror in her eyes. "Captain, you need to get to the bridge right now," she said, her voice shaking. "Long-range sensors are detecting a massive fleet coming out of hyperspace. It's bigger than anything we've ever seen." Jake ran to the bridge, still in his sleeping clothes. The main screen showed a sight that made his blood turn cold. Hundreds of black Vorthic warships were emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. At the center of the fleet was a ship so large it looked like a small moon. "My God," whispered Dr. Palmer. "That thing must be 20 kilometers long." Ryan Cooper was frantically working at his tactical station. "Captain, I'm counting over 300 enemy vessels. The big one in the center is showing massive energy readings. I think it's some kind of planet killer." Tony Blake looked up from communications with his face pale. "Sir, I'm picking up a transmission from the Vorthic flagship. They're identifying themselves as the Devastator Fleet, commanded by Admiral Corax." Jake had heard that name before. Admiral Corax was a legend among the Vorthic. He had destroyed over 50 worlds and had never lost a single battle. The Vorthic sent him when they wanted to make sure nothing survived. "Put him on screen," Jake ordered. The display changed to show a Vorthic who was even more frightening than General Thrix. Admiral Corax was covered in battle scars and wore armor made from the bones of his enemies. His red eyes burned with the hatred of a creature that lived only for war. "Humans," Admiral Corax said in a voice like grinding stone. "I am Admiral Corax of the Devastator Fleet. You have interfered with Vorthic business for the last time. I have come to end your pathetic rebellion and finish what we started with the Kalari." Jake tried to keep his voice steady. "Admiral, we're willing to discuss terms for a peaceful solution." Admiral Corax laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "There will be no terms. There will be no negotiations. You have shown the galaxy that the Vorthic can be challenged. This cannot be allowed to continue. When I am finished here, your Earth will be next." The communication ended, leaving Jake and his crew staring at a fleet that could destroy entire solar systems. The Alliance ships around them suddenly looked very small and fragile. "Captain," said Maria Santos from her engineering station, "our entire fleet has maybe 40 combat-capable ships. They have over 300. This isn't a battle. It's a massacre." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. They had come so far and accomplished so much, but now they were facing an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. He could see the fear in their eyes, but he could also see something else: determination. "We knew this day would come," Jake said quietly. "The Vorthic were never going to let us win without a fight. But we're not the same people who started this mission. We've learned how to work together. We've learned how to adapt." Dr. Palmer stepped forward. "Captain, I've been working with Dr. Valix on something that might help. We can't match the Vorthic in firepower, but we might be able to level the playing field in other ways." "What do you mean?" "The Kalari have developed a virus that can affect computer systems," Dr. Palmer explained. "It was originally designed to repair damaged medical equipment, but we've modified it. If we can get it into the Vorthic ship's computers, it might disrupt their systems long enough for us to attack." Jake felt a spark of hope. How do we deliver it? Dr. Valix appeared on a secondary screen. "Captain Morrison, the virus must be physically introduced to each ship's main computer core. It cannot be transmitted through normal communication channels." "So, we'd have to board their ships," Jake said. "That's suicide." Not necessarily, said Ryan Cooper. The Vorthik use slave crews from conquered races to operate their ships. If we could free those crews, they might help us from the inside. Nicole Barnes, the fleet's best pilot, had been listening from the back of the bridge. Captain, I could lead a team of small fighters into the enemy fleet. We could target their command ships and upload the virus while everyone's distracted. By the main battle, Jake shook his head. Nicole, it's too dangerous. Those fighters would be destroyed before they got close to the enemy ships. Not if we time it right, she insisted. The Vorthik are predictable. They always attack in the same formation. If we can make them think we're retreating, they'll chase us in a straight line. That's when we hit them from the sides. Colonel Johnson, who had been organizing the civilian volunteers, joined the conversation. Captain, some of the freed slaves who've joined our fleet know the layouts of Vorthik ships. They could guide our boarding parties to the right locations. Jake realized that once again, they were going to have to do the impossible, but that seemed to be what humans did best. All right, Jake said. Here's the plan. We'll engage the Vorthik. Fleet in a frontal assault, but it'll be a fake retreat. While they're chasing our main force, Nicole will lead a strike team to their command ships. Meanwhile, any freed slaves in our fleet will try to contact their people still trapped on Vorthik. Vessels. Sam Mitchell, the fleet's intelligence officer, had been monitoring enemy communications. Captain, I'm picking up something interesting. The Vorthik are using a lot of their ships to guard supply lines. They're bringing in reinforcements from other sectors, which means they've weakened their defenses elsewhere. What are you thinking, Sam? If we could hit their supply ships, we might be able to cut off their reinforcements. The Vorthik are used to quick victories. They're not prepared for a long war. Jake nodded. Good thinking. Alex Turner, take a squadron of our fastest ships and harass their supply lines. Don't engage directly. Just hit and run. As the plans took shape, Jake realized they were doing something that had never been tried before in galactic history. Instead of fighting like the Vorthik expected, they were going to fight like humans, using every advantage they could find, adapting to changing conditions, and never giving up even when the situation looked hopeless. Dr. Claire Adams, the fleet's physicist, had been working on modifications to their weapons. Captain, I've figured out how to combine Kaleri medical technology with human engineering. We can create a beam that will disable Vorthik weapons without destroying their ships. That way, the slave crews won't be killed in the crossfire. Rachel Stone, the chief medical officer, was coordinating with Kalari doctors to prepare for the casualties they knew were coming. We've set up field hospitals on several of our ships. If we can free the slaves, we'll be ready to treat their injuries. As the Devastator fleet moved closer to the planet, Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Thousands of beings from dozens of different races were depending on him to find a way to win an impossible battle. But as he looked around the bridge at his crew, and then at the Alliance ships visible through the viewports, he realized something important. They weren't fighting this battle alone. Every species that had been forgotten or dismissed by the galactic powers was here, working together toward a common goal. The Vorthik had made their careers by dividing and conquering, by making their enemies feel isolated and helpless. But this time, they were facing something they had never encountered before: unity. Captain, Lisa Rodriguez called out, I'm getting reports from our scouts. The Vorthik are beginning their attack formation. They'll be in weapons range in 2 hours. Jake took a deep breath. All right, everyone. This is it. Send the signal to all Alliance ships. Operation Liberation begins now. The next few hours would determine the fate of not just the Kaleri, but of every small race in the galaxy. If they failed, the Vorthik would know that resistance was useless. But if they succeeded, they would prove that the age of bullies was ending. The Devastator fleet moved forward like a wall of death, their weapons charging for the attack that would end the rebellion once and for all. But they didn't know that hidden among the asteroids and debris, thousands of beings who had been written off as worthless were preparing to show the galaxy what real strength looked like. Admiral Corax sat in his command chair, confident that this battle would be over quickly. He had destroyed civilizations that were older and more powerful than this ragtag alliance. These humans and their pathetic friends would be just another entry in his long list of victories. But as the two fleets moved toward each other, Jake Morrison smiled grimly. The Vorthik were about to learn that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could grow into the most powerful forces in the universe. The Kalari had spent centuries helping others, and now those debts were finally being repaid. The battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin. The first hour of the battle looked like a complete disaster for the Alliance. Admiral Corax's Devastator fleet smashed through their defensive lines like a hammer through glass. Alliance ships exploded in brilliant balls of fire as the massive Vorthik weapons tore them apart. "We're losing too many ships," Ryan Cooper shouted over the sound of alarms. The Xanthari cruiser healing light just went down. Captain Zara's escape pod got away, but her ship is gone. Jake watched in horror as more of his friends died. The Morphic Collective construction ship Building Hope was cut in half by a Vorthik beam weapon. The Rigel mining vessel Iron Will disappeared in a cloud of debris after a direct hit from 3 enemy fighters. "Captain," Lisa Rodriguez called out with tears in her eyes, "we've lost over half our fleet in the first wave. Maybe we should retreat while we still can." Jake felt the weight of all those deaths pressing down on him. These beings had trusted him to lead them, and now they were dying because of his decisions. For a moment, he almost gave the order to retreat, but then Dr. Valix's voice came through the communication system. "Captain Morrison, do not lose hope. The first part of our plan is working perfectly." Jake looked at the tactical display in confusion. "Working? Dr. Valix, we're being destroyed out there." "Look more carefully, Captain. Those ships that appear to be destroyed are not really gone. We evacuated most of the crews before the battle began. The explosions you see are controlled detonations designed to make the Vorthik think they are winning easily." Ryan Cooper suddenly understood. It's a deception. We're making ourselves look weaker than we really are. "Exactly," Dr. Valix replied. "While the Vorthik celebrate their easy victory, our real ships are moving into position. Nicole Barnes and her strike team are approaching the enemy command vessels right now." On the far side of the battlefield, Nicole was leading a squadron of small, fast fighters through the chaos of the battle. The Vorthik were so focused on destroying the larger Alliance ships that they didn't notice the tiny fighters slipping between their massive hulls. "Target acquired," Nicole reported over her radio. "I can see the Admiral's flagship. It's even bigger up close." Her wingman, Alex Turner, was flying beside her in a converted racing ship. "Nicole, there are hundreds of gun turrets on that thing. How are we supposed to get close without being blown apart?" "We're not going to get close," Nicole replied with a grin. "We're going to get inside." She had studied the intelligence reports from freed slaves who knew Vorthik ship designs. Every major warship had docking bays for smaller vessels. The Vorthik never expected anyone to be crazy enough to fly directly into their ships. "All fighters, follow my lead," Nicole ordered. "We're going in." The small ships dove toward the Vorthik, flagship like arrows shot from a bow. Enemy guns fired at them, but they were too small and too fast to hit easily. One by one, they disappeared into the docking bays of the massive warship dot inside the flagship. Admiral Corax was enjoying his easy victory when alarms suddenly began ringing throughout his ship. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Sir, reported." His tactical officer, Small enemy vessels have somehow gotten inside our docking bays. Security teams are responding, but the intruders are fighting their way toward the computer core. Admiral Corax snarled in anger. How did they get past our defenses? But he didn't have time to worry about it. On the main battlefield, something strange was happening. The Alliance ships that had appeared to be destroyed were suddenly coming back to life. What the Vorthik had thought were debris fields were actually hidden ships that had been waiting for the right moment to strike. "Sir," the tactical officer reported with growing panic, "our sensors were wrong. The enemy fleet is 3 times larger than we thought. They're everywhere." Admiral Corax looked at his tactical display in disbelief. Ships were appearing from behind asteroids, from inside gas clouds, and from the shadows of the planet's moons. The humans and their allies had hidden their real strength until the Vorthik were too committed to retreat. Inside the flagship's computer core, Nicole Barnes and her team were working frantically to upload Dr. Valex's virus. The corridor was filled with smoke and the sound of weapons fire as they fought off Vorthik security forces. "Almost there," called out Sam Mitchell, who was working at a computer terminal. "Just 30 more seconds." "We don't have 30 seconds," Alex Turner replied, firing his weapon at approaching Vorthik soldiers. "They're bringing up heavy weapons, but help came from an unexpected source. The slave crews that the Vorthik forced to operate their ships had been listening to Alliance broadcasts for weeks. When they heard that Nicole's team was trying to free them, they decided to fight back." "Human warriors," called out a voice in broken English. "We help you. This way to computer core." A group of aliens from a dozen different conquered species appeared in the corridor. They were thin and scarred from years of slavery, but their eyes burned with the desire for freedom. Together, the Alliance fighters and the freed slaves fought their way to the ship's main computer. Sam Mitchell connected his device to the Vorthik systems and activated the virus that Dr. Valex had created. "Upload complete," he announced. "The virus is spreading through their entire network." All across the Vorthik fleet, ships began to lose power as their computer systems crashed. Weapons stopped firing. Engines shut down. Communication systems went silent. The mighty Devastator fleet was suddenly helpless, but the virus did more than just disable the ships. It also unlocked the slave quarters throughout the fleet. Thousands of beings who had been forced to serve the Vorthik suddenly found their prison doors opening. Captain Steve Parker, who was leading another strike team, watched in amazement as entire Vorthik ships surrendered without firing a shot. The slave crews had taken control and were ready to join the Alliance. "This is incredible," Steve reported to Jake. "The Vorthik crews are outnumbered 10 to 1 by their own slaves. The slaves are taking over the ships from the inside." Jake felt a surge of hope as he watched the tide of battle turn. "All Alliance ships, this is Captain Morrison. The enemy fleet is disabled. Begin rescue operations for all slave crews. Any Vorthik who surrender will be treated fairly according to galactic law." Admiral Corax was trapped on his own flagship as freed slaves took control of every deck. His mighty fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was falling apart because he had never considered that his victims might fight back. "This is impossible," he raged. "How did weak species like humans and Kalari defeat the mighty Vorthik Empire?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Valex appeared on the flagship's communication system, his calm voice carrying throughout the ship. "Admiral Corax," the Kalari scientist said, "you made a simple mistake. You thought strength came from hurting others. But real strength comes from helping others. Every being you enslaved, every world you destroyed, every act of cruelty you committed has led to this moment." Jake's voice joined Dr. Valex's on the communication system. "Admiral, your empire was built on fear and violence. But our alliance was built on friendship and cooperation. That's why we won. The battle was over, but the real victory was just beginning. As news of the Alliance's triumph spread across the galaxy, something extraordinary happened. The Galactic Council, which had been too afraid to help the Kalari, suddenly wanted to claim credit for the victory. The Council congratulates the brave beings who fought to preserve galactic peace, announced Council President Vex in a broadcast to all member worlds. This victory shows the strength of our united government. Jake was in the middle of coordinating rescue operations when he received a message from the Council demanding that all Alliance ships report to Council space for debriefing and reassignment to Council control. They want to take over, Lisa Rodriguez said angrily. They abandoned us when we needed help, and now they want to control us after we won. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew, and then at the tactical display, showing hundreds of ships from dozens of different species. These beings had risked everything to fight for what was right. They deserved better than to be controlled by the same government that had abandoned them. Open a channel to all Alliance ships, Jake ordered, when every ship in the fleet was listening. Jake spoke from his heart. My friends, we have accomplished something incredible today. We saved the Kalari from destruction. We freed thousands of slaves. We proved that good people working together can overcome any evil. He paused, looking at the faces of beings from across the galaxy who had become his friends and allies. The Galactic Council wants us to report to them for reassignment. But I have a different idea. What if we formed our own government? A government that promises never to abandon those who need help? A government that puts helping others above politics and profit? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every ship in the fleet signaled their agreement. They had tasted freedom and cooperation, and they weren't willing to go back to the old ways. Dr. Valix was the first to speak. Captain Morrison, the Kalari would be honored to join such a government. We propose calling it the Free Worlds Federation. One by one, every species in the Alliance agreed to the proposal. The Zenthari, the Morphic Collective, the Rigel colonies, and dozens of others all pledged to work together for the common good. Jake realized that they had done more than